Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 8-game college basketball slate that starts at noon and goes all the way through 8:30. I will point out that this last three games are also a second slate for the night slate on DraftKings, so you can definitely use the last three games on this video for that particular slate. Before I get started though, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel. Hope everybody did well yesterday. I've been winning quite a bit on college basketball, and I also got some nice wins yesterday. I went 5-1 on my six game parlay with round robins and stuff, so I actually had some nice payoffs as a result of that. Hopefully, I can continue doing that. I've had two big wins the last few days, so let's keep that up. So let's get into this slate here. So we have several good games here. All these games are actually inside 10 points, with the exception of three. And then one of them is over 13, and that is the Creighton game, which is the last one, which is going to be probably pretty lopsided. But all the other games are relatively tight enough that we have some good options throughout the slate. All right, so we're going to start with the Mississippi State game against Washington State. Now, we have a few players from this game that I do like. First, for Mississippi State, we're going to look at Jimmy Bell. Um, excuse me. uh, Here at the forward position. He's been pretty solid in his first three games this season. He has nice upside here. He's also going to have potential for a double double. He's one of the cheapest options for that has double double potential on the slate, so that gives a lot of upside as a result. He should also play around 25 minutes in this one, and Mississippi State is favored to win this game by a few points, so it should be a pretty even game from that perspective. And then we're going to look at Josh Hubbard, who is $5,700. Now, Hubbard has been pretty decent, even though he's played somewhat limited minutes so far this season, but he's getting more minutes each game, I think, and he's going to get a pretty good amount of shots. He is kind of scoring dependent, but he's definitely capable. He is also coming off the bench, so to keep that in mind here. Then we're going to look at Washington State. Now, they have several players that actually have some upside on the slate, one being Mr. Rice for them. In his two games, he's been pretty solid, and his price is still pretty cheap here at $5,500. For this matchup, I do like him, even though he does carry a little bit of risk due to the fact that both their games were kind of lopsided games. But then we're going to look at Jack Mosky. Sorry for butchering your name. He's been really good in his first two games. Obviously, the opponents were not very difficult, but he's got some peripheral stats which helps boost his fantasy potential here, and so he's definitely in play on the slate. Isaac Jones also in play, even though he's fairly expensive here. He has been really good in his first two games, and I look for him to continue that. Hopefully, he gets a little bit more minutes and can get a double double here, but he's played really well for the forward position, so I do like him here. Looking at the next game, this is the Georgetown Mount St. Mary. I really don't like this game very much. There's a couple guys that were borderline being in play, like Jaden Epps, but I think that it's probably safe to pass on that game for the most part. Then we're going to look at USC Upstate versus Minnesota. Now, I got one guy on USC Upstate that I think is a very good option today, and that's Brodenox for them. He's playing the most minutes of pretty much anybody on this team. He's also scoring the most points and has good upside, as he's been getting some assists and rebounds each game as well. And his price is still pretty good, even though it's a little bit higher than I'd like it to be. He's definitely a capable option on the slate, though his team is favored to lose by 12 points, so to keep that in mind here. Then we're going to look at Minnesota, and Dawson Garcia is my favorite option from this team. Obviously, he's pretty expensive, but he's been playing very well, and I expect him to have a pretty big game here, especially considering the fact that they should be able to win this game. And in the two games that they just dominated, he scored at least 40 fantasy points in each one, and that gives him a lot of upside here. Looking at the Rhode Island Northwestern game, we have a couple guys that are really interesting on this game. This is a pretty tight game with Northwestern favored to win by 7 points. But I do like a couple different guys from this game, so we'll look at Zeke Montgomery here first from Rhode Island. He's played very consistent so far this season, scoring a decent amount of points and having some peripheral stats, and his minutes are increasing here. His price is a little bit too cheap for his potential here. He's also the second best scorer on their team, so I think he's a great option for this particular slate, though they do tend to go a deeper bench, so to keep that in mind. As for Northwestern, I have what I think is my best core play of this entire slate, and that is Brooks Barnheiser. Uh, he has been playing extremely well. He just looks like a great option on this slate. He's got a good matchup and has nice upside here, so he's a what I consider a core play for this slate. Obviously, he can play at the guard position as well as the utility, so he's a great option on this slate. Moving into our Nebraska-Oregon State game, we have a couple players, actually three players in this game that I like quite a bit here. One being Mast for Nebraska. He's been pretty solid to start the season. His last game was a little bit light as he didn't get a double double, but he definitely has some potential here, especially if he can pull out a double double, which he should be able to do in this game. Nebraska is favored by 8 or 9 points, and he has some potential there. We're also going to look at Taminga, who is a kind of a contrarian option today, as he's kind of scoring dependent to really pay off here, but he's definitely capable in this matchup, and so I do think he's an alright option. And then we're also going to look at Gray. Sorry, there he is. Gray for Nebraska. He's coming off the bench. The last game, this is the second game. I don't know what to really make of his potential minutes here, but I'm going to guess it's around the same amount of minutes as last game, and he should have some good upside in this one to potentially get a decent amount of points and get some rebounds, and so he definitely draws some upside in this matchup. Looking at Oregon State, obviously they aren't favored to win the game, but they do have two players that I think have some utility, and they tend to go pretty short in their bench, and they have really three guys that do most of the scoring for them. And one of them is Akano, who's played very well so far. He's a little bit underpriced here too. He's gonna get some peripheral stats will help. Obviously, he's been pretty solid in their wins, and so I do like him here. And two of their games have been pretty tight, and he's had really good upside. Then we'll look at uh, Belidio. Sorry, I can't say your name. He's been also pretty solid for them, and he's playing quite a few minutes, which definitely gives him some upside as well. But like I told you, that they kind of limit the different amount of guys that play, so he's very close to being a core play on the slate. Moving into the Harvard game against Boston College. Now, I do think Harvard, um, even they're favored to lose the game by about 5 points, I think they have some utility on the slate. In fact, this is probably my favorite team to stack if you're going to stack a team, even though it's a mid-level scoring game. It felt like most of these players on the team were a little bit too cheap for their starting lineup, and they've all got some upside and had some, and all have played well recently. We'll start with Lewis Lesmond here. He's just $3,900, and he's been around 20 fantasy points in every game so far this season. He's going to be a very popular play on this slate, I believe. Mac is also in play at 6,800 bucks. He's just too cheap for what he's doing right now, and if he plays 30 35 minutes and this game stays close, then he should be in play here as a great option. Piggy is also an interesting play, though a little bit riskier than some of the others. Has played well and has been in double figures in 3 straight games and had a double double yesterday against UMass. So um, now that game was an overtime game, so to keep that in mind, but played well so far this season, so I do like his upside. Then we'll look at Ajabor. He has also played pretty well, but a little bit more inconsistent than the other ones I've mentioned. But he's definitely capable here, and he gets a lot of rebounds, so that should give him some potential to have a good game here. And then Okpara is also in play. In the 3 games he's played very solid and has nice potential with the price point that he's at. It seems like a lot of the guys on this team have not played all the games so far this season, so but they all do seem to play all the they play a pretty small bench, so I do like the upside of their starters. Looking at Boston College, Quentin Post has been pretty good in 2 games, and he didn't get the rebounds of the third one against Citadel, but this game should be a game where he should have a lot of potential to get a bunch of rebounds, and so I do like his upside here, and he's been playing very well so far this season. Looking at the Howard Rutgers game, I do like a few players from Howard as well. Though they are playing kind of a deep bench and kind of had a bunch of guys that have not played most of the season, but one guy that has played and is playing a lot of minutes is Bryce Harris, and he hasn't really been affected negatively of the other guys coming back who were either not playing yet or were waiting on NCAA or whatever else. And so he's played very well, and he has some nice potential at this matchup and this price point. I'm also going to mention a couple guys that I don't know if they're going to come off the bench or start, but Seth Towns in his first game of the season, he has an absolutely great game in his first one, and he's get a just near minimum price here. Assuming he's in the lineup, he's going to be a must play, or I'm not exactly sure why he's so cheap. Then we'll look at Jelani Williams also. Um, he definitely has some potential in this matchup as well, though he's a little bit more expensive than Towns. He's played pretty solid so far. I do want to note that Howard is projected to lose this game by 13 points, but I do think that those guys are going to be hard to avoid, assuming that it looks like they're going to get a full complement of minutes. Looking at uh, Rutgers, Hyatt is the best option on this team. He's played very well so far. He did have a low floor game in his first game of the year, but this should be a game where they should be a little bit more up tempo and have some potential to score some more points. And he's been the best scorer on this team so far. Then finally, last but not least, we're going to look at the Creighton game. And Creighton really has one guy I really like a lot, and that's Trey Alexander. He's played very well so far. He's got as much upside as anybody on the slate by a lot. He's been getting assists, rebounds, points, also getting some steals and blocks, so that gives him some potential. He can also shoot threes. We saw him a lot last season, and so I look for him to come back and have another good season this time as well. So overall, I think the slate is pretty interesting, and even the night slate's going to be pretty interesting. But I think it's going to be a good slate and should have a lot of potential for a high scoring. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.